Hi everyone, today we're going to be discussing a very special camera, what I believe to be one of the best compact cameras of all time, the Ricoh GR3. This video wasn't sponsored and I paid for this camera with my own money, twice actually, after the first one hit the ground. It's rare that I'm willing to buy the same camera twice, but whenever I do, that just goes to show how much I actually like the camera. So this camera is a $970 pocket-sized point-and-shoot with a retractable 28mm equivalent prime lens, and it also features a large APS-C format sensor, which is very large for its size. It is ideal for street photographers, documentarians, and those who simply want to capture everyday life. I can talk a bit more about its features in a bit, but just to provide a little bit of context, this camera is very unique in today's world. In the 2000s, point-and-shoot compact cameras such as Cybershots, Coolpixes, they were some of the most widespread digital cameras out there. They were very easy to use. All you had to do was turn it on, point, and shoot. They also came in conveniently small form factors, so it wasn't much of a burden to carry them. But as smartphones gradually became the norm, featuring built-in cameras with increasingly improved image quality, compact point-and-shoots have gotten simply replaced. After all, why would anyone carry around two different things that do exactly the same thing? This question is the eliminator that took down most of the point-and-shoot market in favor of the smartphone camera. However, the Ricoh GR3 is one of the only point-and-shoot cameras that rose to silent prominence in our age despite all of this, and I think it is one of the absolute best in its class. The primary reason why the GR3 is so incredible is the lengthy list of high-end features and the excellent value that the camera brings relative to its tiny, pocketable form factor, which weighs in at only 257 grams or half a pound. Firstly, it has an APS-C size sensor, which is a massive sensor compared to all of the other ones in point-and-shoots. Most point-and-shoots feature sensors 1 inch and smaller. This sensor is the same size as in much larger cameras such as the D500, 7D, X-T5, A6700 from all the different major manufacturers. This allows the camera to capture large amounts of detail with fantastic low light performance. Most APS-C format cameras are much larger in form and weigh at least 3 to 4 times as much as this camera when you factor in the bigger lenses and heavier bodies. Secondly, the GR3 also offers in-body image stabilization, which is a premium feature not seen in less expensive camera bodies. In-body image stabilization, or IBIS, allows for you to take photos at much slower shutter speeds by compensating against any hand or arm movement while shooting. Thirdly, this camera features a fixed 28mm f2.8 lens, which paired with the APS-C sensor gives a field of view equivalent to 28mm in full-frame terms. This lens, though retractable, is an extremely high-quality one, comparable to the best in its class. This lens also features a leaf shutter, which is quieter and helps you be more discreet while photographing your subjects. The 2.8 aperture is also moderately wide and can produce pretty nice bokeh in situations where your subject is relatively close to the frame. This is also an aperture that is bright enough for shooting at night without needing to bump up your ISOs to extreme values. I think it's a perfect compromise between having a larger aperture versus keeping a compact form factor. Lastly, the GR3 has many clever features designed to make this camera easy and convenient to operate with the user in mind. Some of these features might even be completely unique to this camera, which makes it an even cooler camera to have. One clever feature is the GR3's snap focusing mode, which is a creative implementation of traditional zone focusing. Normally, when you have a manual focus lens and want a zone focus, you set the aperture value to a smaller number such as f8 or 11, so your depth of field is much deeper, and set the focusing distance to 5 feet, for example, and then everything within 3 to 10 feet will be in focus. So when you're doing street or travel photography, you just need to make sure that your subject's within that preset distance or zone that you've defined, and it will be guaranteed to be in focus. This is the fastest way to use manual focus lenses and guarantee sharp results. Of course, if your desired focus distance constantly changes, this might not be the ideal way to focus and might actually slow you down. But snap focusing remains a highly useful and pretty clever implementation for specific shooting styles involving preset distances. The GR3 also does not have a viewfinder. Instead, it features an external viewfinder purchased separately that you can attach via the hot shoe. This viewfinder is simply a set of optics that provides frame lines for a 28mm field of view. It also provides a 21mm field of view in case you purchase the wide-angle adapter as well. For a fully analog-like experience, you can set the focusing mode to snap focusing, turn off the display, and attach the external viewfinder. It will feel like you are shooting completely without electronics. It is a very unique experience with a digital camera that surprisingly works very well in providing an immersive photography experience. The camera also features 2GB of internal storage alongside the standard SD card slot. This is extremely useful in case you forget your SD card, which I'm sure has happened to all of us at least once or twice. 2GB are sufficient to store around 60 to 80 RAW files or several hundred JPEGs. Additionally, when you do find your SD card and slot it in, you can quickly transfer your images from internal memory onto your card, done all in camera. Many camera enthusiasts nowadays enjoy having film emulations or film-like profiles in camera so that their JPEG images come out beautifully without the need for additional processing. The GR3 has a few film emulation presets in both color and black and white, which are both absolutely beautiful. You can even customize each profile to your exact liking, adjusting contrast, saturation, fade, and other features. I personally didn't even expect this much in this category, given that nobody says too much about Ricoh color, but apparently this is something that they do very well. Another convenience is that you are able to easily charge this camera via USB-C, so you won't necessarily need an external charger for overnight trips. For a full day's worth of shooting, however, I would recommend multiple batteries as the capacities can be rather limited given how small the batteries are. Although the GR3 has many wonderful features, there are a few potential negatives. Weather sealing, or the lack thereof, is a potential issue for those of you who live in or travel frequently to areas with unfavorable weather. Although I haven't personally experienced it, others have also reported issues with sensor dust related to the lack of weather sealing. This camera also has no viewfinder. However, I don't necessarily find this a con because it does make the camera more compact, and also you do have the option for the external viewfinder. The battery life is also a bit short, but with conservative use, it should still last a full day. Again, for heavy users, I would definitely recommend that extra battery. There is also the smartphone app, but unfortunately it doesn't work well in my experience, so I would probably keep Bluetooth and Wi-Fi turned off in the camera to maximize battery life. In usage, this camera functions best as an everyday documentary camera or a street photography tool. It truly is ready for everyday carry because of the incredibly negligible cost of bringing it along. You might have to really think twice about bringing along another camera, whether it's a DSLR or mirrorless camera, simply because they weigh so much more. The GR3, on the other hand, is a tiny lightweight camera that fits easily into your pocket and perfectly into your everyday life. The image quality is still noticeably better than what current smartphone cameras can get you, and it does provide a significantly better shooting experience. It also works exceptionally well for selfies too. Personally, there are days where I do not want to lug a clunky camera around, but still might want to shoot. There are days where I prefer being discreet, such as when I'm traveling through areas with a higher crime rate, or I simply don't want to attract unnecessary attention with a more expensive looking camera. Having something like a GR3 makes it so easy to simply bring a camera and not have to think or worry about it. So it is an excellent everyday camera, but is it also a great travel camera? I think this would highly depend on what kind of traveling you do. If you need an ultralight solution and prioritize weight savings and convenience above all else, then I think the GR3 would be perfect for you. If you travel to places with frequent rain, snow, or dust, this might not be the perfect solution for you due to the lack of weather sealing. I personally am the type of traveler who would prefer having multiple focal lengths and a higher megapixel count for more flexibility. So if you're like me, this wouldn't necessarily be a perfect standalone travel camera. Instead, it can still function as an ideal everyday camera around home, on short trips, or as a secondary camera for a larger system on extended trips. Are there any alternatives to this camera? In my opinion, not really. There don't seem to be any other cameras with such a large sensor in such a small body. There are definitely cameras that are similar in size, such as the Sony RX100 series or similar offerings from Panasonic, but those cameras have far smaller sensors compared to the GR3. There are also relatively compact large sensor point and shoots such as the Fujifilm X100 series or the Leica Q series, but those cameras end up being significantly larger and heftier. I think that this camera is in a league of its own in terms of category, and it's difficult to find other cameras with such a unique combination of desirable qualities. Considering the sensor size, this camera is also more affordable than the other options, sitting at $970 compared to the $1,400 Fujifilm X100V or the $6,000 Leica Q3. I should also mention that there is another version of the GR3, the GR3X, that has a 40mm equivalent lens instead. It's about $100 more expensive, but functionally and visually, everything else is identical. If you prefer a tighter field of view, this might be a better option for you. I'm personally just sticking with the standard 3 just because the wider lens has more use for me in more situations when I want a small camera. There are also a few different variations of each model, such as the Street Edition, Urban Edition, Diary Edition, but they're all functionally the same. They might just offer a few cosmetic differences. On the topic of alternatives, there was a half-a-year gap between when my first GR3 broke due to it being dropped on the ground and me getting my current one. During that time, I actually got a Leica Q2 to serve as the replacement. My reasoning was that I like the super compact 28mm lens, but I wanted bit more shallow depth of field and more resolution. While the Q2 was very fun to use, it did compete heavily with my other non-compact cameras for the same bag space rather than complemented them like what the GR3 would have done. What I mean is that the Q2 is almost as big and heavy as a standard full-frame mirrorless camera plus lens. It makes less sense to have both on a trip. Whereas in the case of the GR3, if you have a big full-frame setup with a large and heavy lens, it does make a lot of sense to have a pocketable mini camera for some quick snaps. So in the end, I went ahead and just got another GR3 after missing it dearly for half a year. In conclusion, the GR3 is an incredible camera for its size and weight and is an amazing tool to document everyday life. With the GR3, you'll no longer have to decide whether you want to lug around a bulky camera or just be stuck with your smartphone. This camera is one of the best camera purchases I have ever made in terms of value and utility. It has actually improved my life by reducing the amount of stress related to bringing cameras anywhere. Do I want to bring a camera? If I do bring a camera, how will I protect it, prevent scratches, or how do I prevent it from getting stolen? With the GR3, it's always such an easy decision. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you all next time.